What if one of the strongest military powers in the Middle East is facing challenges that even its closest allies can't solve? For decades, Israel has been known for its advanced military, powerful intelligence network, and strong international partnerships. Yet today, growing political divisions, rising global criticism, economic pressure, and shifting alliances are raising serious questions about its future. Then came a statement that caught many people by surprise. Reports and political commentators began discussing whether some of these problems have reached a point where nothing can be done through traditional solutions alone. But is Israel really approaching a historic turning point? Or is this another moment of crisis that the country will overcome, as it has many times before? In this video, we'll break down 10 critical reasons why some analysts believe Israel is entering one of the most challenging periods in its history. And trust me, reason number 1 changes everything. Before you go, tell us in the comments, which of these 10 reasons do you think is the biggest challenge facing Israel today, and why? We spend hours researching and creating videos like this. So if you appreciate the effort, please subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it helps us bring you more in-depth content every week. Perhaps the most alarming reason some analysts are sounding the alarm isn't a military threat, an economic crisis, or even international pressure. It's the possibility that there is no single solution to the challenges Israel faces today. Think about it for a moment. Most national crises have a clear path forward. If there's an economic problem, governments can introduce reforms. If there's a security threat, military action may provide an answer. If diplomatic relations weaken, negotiations can often repair the damage. But what happens when all of these problems begin happening at the same time? This is where many experts believe the real challenge begins. Israel is dealing with a complicated mix of issues that are deeply connected. Security concerns affect the economy. Economic pressures influence politics. Political divisions impact decision-making. International criticism shapes diplomatic relationships. And every one of these factors can make the others even more difficult to solve. It's like trying to repair a ship while sailing through a storm. Fix one leak, and another appears. Strengthen one area, and pressure builds somewhere else. This is why some commentators argue that traditional approaches may no longer be enough. The strategies that worked 10 or 20 years ago may not work in a world that has changed dramatically. Technology is changing warfare. Social media is influencing public opinion at lightning speed. Global alliances are shifting in unexpected ways. And perhaps the most unsettling question is this: what if the biggest threat isn't any single crisis, but the combination of all of them happening together? History has shown that nations rarely struggle because of one problem alone. More often, challenges become dangerous when they begin to overlap and reinforce each other. That's why many observers believe the future will depend not on finding one perfect solution, but on navigating a complex web of problems that may require entirely new ways of thinking. And as we'll see next, one of those growing pressures is becoming harder for Israel to ignore. For decades, Israel has built a reputation as one of the most capable military powers in the world. Its armed forces are highly trained. Its intelligence agencies are respected globally, and its ability to respond quickly to threats has often been viewed as one of its greatest strengths. But today, a growing number of analysts are asking a difficult question. Can military success alone guarantee long-term security? This question lies at the heart of one of Israel's biggest challenges. Winning battles and achieving strategic objectives are important. However, history repeatedly shows that military victories do not always lead to lasting peace. In many conflicts around the world, fighting may end temporarily, only for tensions to reappear years later in a different form. This creates a difficult dilemma. Even when immediate threats are addressed, deeper issues often remain unresolved. Political disputes, territorial disagreements, regional rivalries, and competing visions for the future can continue beneath the surface. Imagine putting out a fire in one room while sparks continue to spread through the rest of the building. The immediate danger may be reduced, but the risk has not completely disappeared. Many experts believe this is why long-term planning has become increasingly complicated. Every decision made today could have consequences, years or even decades into the future. The challenge is not simply about responding to today's threats. It's about creating a future where new threats do not continuously emerge. And that's easier said than done. The Middle East remains one of the most unpredictable regions in the world. Alliances shift, political leadership changes, new technologies alter the balance of power. What appears stable today can look completely different tomorrow. That uncertainty has led some observers to argue that the real question is no longer whether Israel can defend itself in the present. The bigger question is whether a sustainable and lasting security framework can be achieved for future generations. And that challenge becomes even more complicated when we look at the growing divisions inside the country itself. When people think about threats to a nation, they often imagine dangers coming from outside its borders. But history tells a different story. Some of the greatest challenges countries have ever faced didn't come from foreign armies or external enemies. They came from deep divisions within their own societies. And this is a concern that many analysts increasingly discuss when examining Israel's future. Over the past several years, political disagreements have become more intense. Debates over government policies, judicial reforms, national security, and the direction of the country have sparked passionate reactions across different segments of society. On the surface, political debate is a normal part of any democracy. In fact, disagreement can be healthy, but when divisions become too deep, they can begin affecting something much larger: national unity. Imagine a team competing in the championship game. Every player may be talented, determined, and capable. But if the players cannot agree on a strategy, their chances of success become much smaller. The same principle applies to nations. When citizens become increasingly divided over major issues, governments often find it harder to make long-term decisions. Political instability can create uncertainty for businesses, investors, allies, and even military planners. Some observers worry that constant political battles consume valuable energy that could otherwise be focused on solving critical challenges facing the country. Even more concerning is the possibility that divisions can create frustration and distrust among ordinary citizens. When trust begins to weaken, rebuilding it can take years. This doesn't mean Israel is unique. Many countries around the world are experiencing similar political polarization. But in a region already facing security concerns and geopolitical tensions, internal disagreements can carry even greater consequences. And here's the key question: can a nation remain strong externally if it becomes increasingly fragmented internally? For many experts, the answer to that question may play a major role in shaping Israel's future. But internal politics are only part of the story, because beyond Israel's borders, the entire Middle East is changing. And those changes may be happening faster than many people realize. One of the biggest mistakes in geopolitics is assuming that today's allies will always remain allies, and that today's rivals will always remain rivals. History has proven otherwise, and nowhere is that reality more visible than in the Middle East, a region where political relationships can change faster than many people expect. For decades, Israel's strategic planning was based on a relatively predictable regional landscape. Countries had clear positions, alliances were easier to understand, and major players generally followed familiar patterns. But today, that landscape is shifting. New partnerships are emerging. Former rivals are finding areas of cooperation. Regional powers are pursuing their own interests with greater independence, and global powers are competing for influence across the region. This creates a level of uncertainty that can make long-term planning extremely difficult. Imagine playing a game of chess where the rules keep changing in the middle of the match. Every move becomes harder to predict because the board itself is constantly evolving. That's the challenge many analysts believe Israel faces today. A diplomatic breakthrough in one area could create tension somewhere else. A new alliance might strengthen regional stability or completely reshape existing power balances. The situation becomes even more complicated when outside powers become involved. Countries such as the United States, Russia, China, and various regional actors all have interests in the Middle East, and those interests don't always align. As a result, Israel must navigate a geopolitical environment that is becoming increasingly complex. The challenge isn't simply identifying threats. It's anticipating how relationships, alliances, and strategic priorities may change years from now. Because in international politics, being prepared for today's reality isn't enough. Nations must also prepare for the reality that hasn't arrived yet. And that brings us to another powerful force transforming the modern world, one that doesn't rely on tanks, missiles, or armies. Instead, it influences minds, shapes opinions, and can change global perceptions overnight. In the past, wars were fought primarily on battlefields. Today, they're also being fought on smartphones, social media platforms, and computer screens across the world. And according to many analysts, this may be one of the most significant changes in modern conflict. Why? Because public opinion has become a powerful weapon. A single photo, a short video clip, or even a viral post can reach millions of people within minutes. Long before governments release official statements, narratives can already be spreading across the globe. In many cases, perceptions are formed before all the facts are known. Think about how quickly information travels today. A person sitting thousands of miles away can watch events unfold in real time and immediately form an opinion about what is happening. This creates a completely new challenge. Military strength may influence events on the ground, but information strength can influence how those events are viewed by the world. And perception matters. Public opinion can affect diplomatic relationships, international pressure, economic partnerships, and even policy decisions made by foreign governments. Some experts argue that modern conflicts are no longer just about winning physical battles. They're also about winning the battle for global attention. The challenge is that information moves at incredible speed, while facts often take much longer to verify. By the time corrections are made, millions of people may have already accepted a particular narrative. This has created an environment where every event can instantly become part of a global conversation. And in a world connected by technology, controlling that conversation is nearly impossible. That's why many observers believe information warfare has become one of the defining features of 21st century geopolitics. The question is no longer just who has the strongest military. The question is, who controls the story? Because in today's world, narratives can influence international outcomes almost as much as traditional power. And as powerful as information warfare has become, an even bigger transformation is taking place. One that is changing the nature of warfare itself. For most of history, military strength was relatively easy to measure. The larger army usually had the advantage. More tanks, more aircraft, and more resources often meant a greater chance of success. But the modern battlefield has changed, and according to many military experts, this change is reshaping conflicts across the world. Today, smaller groups can challenge far larger and more powerful opponents using tactics that barely existed a few decades ago. This is known as asymmetric warfare, a type of conflict where one side avoids fighting on traditional terms and instead uses unconventional methods to gain an advantage. Think about it. A drone costing a few $1,000s can threaten equipment worth millions. Cyber attacks can disrupt critical systems without a single soldier crossing a border. Online networks can coordinate activities across vast distances almost instantly. Suddenly, military superiority becomes more complicated than simply having the most advanced weapons. The battlefield is no longer limited to land, sea, and air. It now includes cyberspace, information networks, and emerging technologies that are evolving at an astonishing pace. For Israel, this creates a unique challenge. The country has invested heavily in maintaining one of the world's most advanced defense systems. Yet new threats continue to emerge faster than traditional security doctrines can adapt. It's a constant race between innovation and counter-innovation. Every time a new defense system is developed, opponents search for new ways to bypass it. Every time a threat is neutralized, another one appears in a different form. This creates a situation where achieving complete security becomes increasingly difficult. Many analysts argue that future conflicts may look very different from those of the past. Victory may depend less on overwhelming force and more on adaptability, technology, and speed. And here's the unsettling reality. The rules of warfare are changing faster than many governments can keep up with. But military challenges aren't the only concern, because even the strongest defense systems can't protect a country from another growing pressure, one that affects every citizen, every business, and every government budget. The pressure of economic strain. Wars are fought on battlefields, but their consequences are often felt far away from the front lines, in homes, in businesses, in schools, and throughout an entire economy. This is why many analysts believe one of the most overlooked challenges facing Israel today is the long-term cost of continuous conflict. At first glance, the effects may not always be obvious. Countries can often absorb the financial impact of short-term military operations. Governments can increase spending, mobilize resources, and maintain stability during periods of crisis. But what happens when tensions continue for months or even years? The costs begin to accumulate. Military operations require enormous resources. Equipment must be replaced. Defense systems must be maintained. Infrastructure may need repairs. Security measures often expand, and government spending can rise dramatically. At the same time, uncertainty can affect investment and economic growth. Businesses tend to thrive in stable environments where the future feels predictable. But when uncertainty increases, companies may delay expansion plans, investors may become cautious, and consumer confidence can weaken. Imagine trying to build a house while constantly preparing for storms. Progress becomes slower, more expensive, and far less predictable. Many economists argue that prolonged instability can create pressures that extend far beyond military budgets. It can influence housing markets, employment opportunities, tourism, international trade, and overall economic confidence. And while strong economies are often resilient, no economy is completely immune to long-term pressure. This is why some observers believe that the true cost of conflict cannot be measured solely in dollars or military expenditures. It must also be measured in opportunities lost, investments delayed, and uncertainty experienced by ordinary citizens. Because over time, economic strength becomes a critical component of national strength. And that leads directly to another challenge that could shape Israel's future in profound ways. A challenge that has nothing to do with weapons, technology, or military strategy. It's about people and the demographic trends that are quietly reshaping the region year after year. Sometimes the most powerful forces shaping a nation's future aren't military, political, or economic. They're demographic. And unlike sudden crises that make headlines overnight, demographic changes happen slowly, quietly, and often go unnoticed until their impact becomes impossible to ignore. Many experts believe this is one of the most important long-term challenges facing Israel. Why? Because population trends have the power to influence nearly every aspect of a country's future. Politics, economics, national identity, social services, and even security planning. The reality is simple. Populations do not remain static. They grow, age, migrate, and change over time. And when different communities experience different growth rates, the effects can eventually reshape the political and social landscape of an entire nation. This is not unique to Israel. Throughout history, demographic shifts have transformed countries, altered governments, and influenced major geopolitical events around the world. The challenge is that demographic trends are difficult to reverse once they are underway. Governments can adjust policies, economies can recover from recessions, political leaders can be replaced. But demographic changes often unfold across generations. Think of it like steering a massive ship across the ocean. Small adjustments today may not produce visible results for years, yet they can dramatically affect where the ship eventually arrives. For Israel, these trends raise complex questions about governance, representation, economic planning, and long-term stability. Many analysts argue that the decisions made today may influence the country's demographic reality decades from now. And that's what makes this issue so significant. It's not just about the present. It's about what the country could look like 20, 30, or even 50 years into the future. Because while military threats can emerge suddenly, Demographic trends shape history slowly, often becoming visible only when major changes have already taken place. And as important as demographics are, another challenge may be exerting even greater pressure, a challenge involving the country's most important ally and one of the most influential nations on Earth, the United States. For decades, one relationship has stood at the center of Israel's strategic position in the world: its partnership with the United States. Military cooperation, diplomatic support, intelligence sharing, and economic ties have made this relationship one of the most significant alliances in modern geopolitics. But according to many analysts, the challenge today is not the relationship itself. The challenge is the growing uncertainty surrounding its future direction. America is changing, its politics are changing, and public opinion is changing as well. Issues that once enjoyed broad bipartisan support are increasingly becoming subjects of intense debate. Generational differences are emerging. Political priorities are evolving. New voices are entering the conversation. And social media has accelerated the speed at which public attitudes can shift. For Israel, this creates an important strategic question. What happens when your most important ally begins experiencing major political transformations of its own? The answer isn't simple. The United States remains a powerful partner, and cooperation between the two countries continues across many areas. However, long-term planners must think beyond the present moment. They must consider what future administrations, future voters, and future political movements may prioritize. Imagine building your future around a bridge that has always been there. The bridge still stands strong today, but if its structure begins changing over time, you naturally start asking questions about what the future might look like. This doesn't mean the alliance is disappearing. Far from it. What it does mean is that uncertainty has become part of the equation. And in geopolitics, uncertainty can be almost as influential as reality itself. Many experts argue that nations must prepare not only for current conditions, but also for future scenarios that may seem unlikely today, because political landscapes can change much faster than most people expect. And that brings us to the final reason, perhaps the most dramatic and controversial of them all, a challenge that extends beyond governments, beyond military power, and beyond traditional diplomacy. A challenge involving global public opinion itself. If military strength determines what happens on the battlefield, then international legitimacy often determines what happens afterwards. And according to many analysts, this may be one of the most significant challenges Israel faces moving forward. Throughout its history, Israel has relied not only on military capabilities, but also on diplomatic relationships, international partnerships, and support from key allies around the world. But in today's interconnected age, maintaining that support has become increasingly complicated. Why? Because global public opinion is changing faster than ever before. A conflict that once might have been discussed primarily by governments is now debated instantly by millions of people across social media platforms, news outlets, universities, and international organizations. Every event is scrutinized, every decision is analyzed, and every action is viewed through countless different perspectives. As a result, international pressure can build rapidly. Many countries now face growing domestic debates about foreign policy, and political leaders often find themselves balancing strategic interests with public opinion at home. This creates a difficult environment for any nation involved in a long-running conflict, because modern diplomacy is no longer shaped only by private meetings between leaders. It is increasingly influenced by global audiences watching events unfold in real time. Imagine standing under a spotlight that grows brighter every year. Every move becomes more visible, every mistake becomes more costly, and every decision faces immediate judgment from people around the world. This is why some experts believe the battle for international legitimacy may become just as important as traditional military or diplomatic victories. The challenge isn't simply winning support from governments. It's maintaining credibility and trust among global populations whose opinions can influence future policies, partnerships, and alliances. And this leads us to the most important realization of all. The question may not be whether Israel is finished. The real question is whether the country can successfully adapt to a world that is changing faster than ever before. Because history shows that nations rarely survive. by standing still. They survive by evolving. And that may ultimately determine what Israel's future looks like in the years ahead. So, after looking at these 10 critical challenges, one thing becomes clear. The debate surrounding Israel's future is far more complex than the dramatic headlines we often see online. This isn't simply a story about military strength, political leadership, or international diplomacy. It's a story about how multiple pressures can converge at the same time, from changing regional alliances and internal political divisions to economic strain, demographic shifts, and the growing power of information warfare. Each challenge adds another layer of uncertainty to an already complicated situation. And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from this entire discussion. History teaches us that nations rarely face a single defining challenge. Instead, they face a series of interconnected problems that test their ability to adapt, innovate, and evolve. The real question isn't whether Israel is finished. The real question is whether its leaders, institutions, and society can successfully navigate a world that is changing faster than ever before. Because the future is rarely decided by one event. It's shaped by countless decisions made over years, sometimes decades. And while no one can predict exactly what lies ahead, one thing is certain. The choices made today will influence not only Israel's future, but also the future of the broader Middle East, and perhaps even global geopolitics. As we've seen throughout history, moments of great uncertainty often become turning points. Some nations emerge stronger, others struggle to adapt. Which path Israel ultimately takes remains one of the most important questions of our time. And that's why this conversation matters. Because understanding these challenges isn't just about one country. It's about understanding how power, politics, technology, and public opinion are reshaping the world we all live in. The coming years may reveal answers that today remain impossible to predict, but they will undoubtedly be watched by the entire world.